The randomness of rolling dice can make a Dungeons and Dragons session go in exciting and unexpected directions. One way to harness this chaotic energy to make the game more fun and spark imagination and power the engine of an interesting story is by using random tables. I love random tables. I love finding new ones. I love making my own. I love rolling on them. I use them in my prep and during the game. Not always, but woof, all the time. This channel is called the Verdigris Table because I happened to paint this table that color when we started playing around it years ago, but also because I love a good random roll table. In the past year or so, especially random encounter tables. Not everybody feels the same way. There is a ton of hate out there for random encounters in the various Dungeons and Dragons online communities. Odds are there is a video in your sidebar right now with a title like Why Random Encounter Tables Suck. And while acknowledging, as always, that everybody's different, every game is different, and that random encounters might not be for you or might not be for you every session, I'm here to tell you that they can be amazing, and using them has taken my game to a whole new level. I use them as the cornerstone of my current campaign, and it has resulted in the most dynamic, living, breathing world I've ever experienced in a game. It has delighted and surprised and occasionally terrified my players game night after game night, and it also manages to surprise, delight, and occasionally terrify me, the Dungeon Master. It feels like the world I created is acting on its own accord, and we're never sure what we're going to discover when the party leaves town and sets out on an adventure. That is really exciting to me, but it's the very feature that makes some dungeon masters hate random encounters. They can distract from the main narrative. That is definitely a fair criticism, and there are times when I won't roll them for this very reason, but I think many good games have side quests, and a lot of the best stories have B-plots and supporting characters. In fantasy and sci-fi, some of the most imaginative, memorable moments are those little glimpses we get into the world building that aren't necessarily driving the main plot. I believe if used well, random encounters are a tool that can actually enhance the story side of the game while helping dungeon masters avoid the pitfalls of being so focused on their narrative that they're crafting that the players start to feel railroaded. It also builds up your dungeon master muscles for when things do go off the rails, and it is a great tool to go reaching for when that inevitably happens. In this one, we're talking about the basics of what random encounters are and what purpose they serve. If you're already familiar or you already use them in your game, there still might be some very useful creativity sparking ideas in this one for you, but you might also want to just go check out the last video where I laid out 10 ways to make better random encounters, or the next parts of this series where we're going to dig a little bit deeper into like the crunchier mechanics side of this, and then talk about what I've brewed up for my home game. But first, we're going by the book, the Dungeon Master's Guide, because I feel like a lot of the criticisms out there actually do get addressed in here. Read the helping friendly book, folks, because starting on page 85 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, we get a couple pages on random encounters and a pretty decent random encounter table as an example. Now, right away, I think it's like the fourth sentence or fifth sentence in this section, the DMG itself acknowledges that the random encounter table is not for everyone, and it does that even before laying out what it is. It says, and I quote, "Some players and DMs view random encounters in an adventure as time wasters. Yet, well-designed random encounters can serve a variety of useful purposes." I believe that the well-designed there is the key aspect to all of this. There are plenty of tables out there that are poorly designed or barely designed with entries like that classic D6 Wolves, and I think that's where a lot of the hate comes from. All of the elements that make for good encounters still apply to random encounters, maybe even more so. One great way to design well is to consider the purpose. So let's look at what the DMG lays out, 6 bullet points on the purpose of random encounters. 1. Random encounters create urgency. This is the first reason why many DMs start trying to use them. Left to their own devices, the players will likely go supernova in every combat that they come across, and then go take a long rest, because it's actually smart gameplay. Why would they risk pushing deeper into the dungeon with diminishing resources when they could just set up camp and do it tomorrow with full health and all their abilities recharged? Well, because random encounters, that's why. I mean, there's other reasons, but this is a great one. You hack and slash your way into the lost crypt of Engelmar, clear out a few rooms of like undead and vermin and maybe some eldritch abominations, and then decide to take a nap. So what do you think will happen? Well, there's a chance that some wandering monster finds you while you've got your guard down, and now the party has to weigh that risk against the risk of pressing on. I think this actually meshes really well with the second bullet point in the DMG. Random encounters establish atmosphere. Now, the book means matching the tone of the adventure. So in our Lost Crypt, we'd probably find wandering zombies and patrolling skeletons to set the mood and signal that there are probably tougher undead deeper down in here. But I also think there is a broader point to be made here. The atmosphere we're establishing is also that this place is dangerous. You don't set up a picnic for an hour and roll your hit dice whenever you want to. You do it when you have to, because here there be monsters. One thing I say a lot, especially with new players at my table, is that D&D is not a video game. There is no save point in the dungeon. The monsters aren't just standing around waiting for someone to come and defeat them. You killed a bunch of their friends. They might be looking for you now, or they're just going about their business in here because you're in their house. So you better secure that door and set a watch before you take that rest, because it doesn't necessarily have to be the lowest CR things patrolling down here. Random encounters can be, a swarm of rats, but they can be difficult or even deadly. There's a chance you could pull some shadows or ghouls or a wrath or even old Engelmar himself down here. Later on, the DMG says random encounters don't have to be level appropriate challenges for these adventurers. And I am a very firm believer in that, especially like out in the wilderness. But even in the dungeon, the random encounter can potentially be more dangerous than what lies in wait in the next room because of the third bullet point in the DMG. Random encounters drain character resources. D&D is many things, but one of those things is a game about resource management. If the party knows that there are ghouls in this next room and they'll only maybe get skeletons if they roll a random encounter, they'll risk those skeletons every time and face those ghouls after a rest. It's a game of attrition. A series of encounters, one after the other, will always be way more of a challenge than those same encounters taken alone at full strength. Now, it is definitely possible to overcorrect with this and stray into adversarial Dungeon Master territory here. So like most things in life, all things in balance, but random encounters are a prime way to keep that tension and challenge level up. Leaving it to the dice also shifts some of the responsibility from the DM, and the potential threat of random encounters often does a lot for the game alone, whether an encounter is triggered or not. The fourth bullet point here is one that often goes overlooked, and I think understanding it really broadens out our idea of what random encounters can be. Because right in the DMG, we get that random encounters can provide assistance. Now, most random encounter tables are just lists of monsters to fight, but it doesn't have to be all combat. We talked about this in the last video, but if the party is traveling down the road, they may encounter bandits who want to rob them, sure, but they also might cross paths with the merchant who has some sweet magic items for sale. Down here in the Lost Crypt, the ghost that's apparating through the door during second watch might, be trying to kill everybody, but it could also be a friendly NPC with a lot of information to share that could really help the party. a few beneficial entries on a random encounter table, and it's suddenly a whole different experience. Now I'm going to group 0.5 and 0.6 together because they feel like almost the same thing. There's a little nuance here, but random encounters can add interest and reinforce campaign themes. If you're doing it right, these tables can be filled with these delicious little nuggets of world building. And that's really why I love them, or one of the many reasons I love them, because they present a dynamic world that is going on around and without the characters. Some dungeon masters don't want this, don't want any details that aren't about the main characters in the story. But personally, I'm in it to create a setting that feels as real as possible. I actually didn't realize it until I was prepping for this video, but I've actually incorporated the same example from the DMG into my home game, and thinking about it, so did Matt Mercer in Critical Role Campaign 2. Whether the player characters get involved or not, there's a war going on in the background. There are these little vignettes that remind players of this fact on the encounter table, and they make the world feel alive, chugging along with or without PC intervention. In my game, we're off on the outer fringes of an empire that's collapsing into civil war, and it's mostly been set dressing so far, though there's been like waves of displaced people, and they've introduced some important plot points for sure. And the point is, who knows, in a few levels, the PCs might get involved. It's up to them, especially if we're trying to create this open world sandbox feel, including these sort of neutral encounters alongside beneficial ones, and the standard combats that populate most tables can really enrich your game and keep random encounters from becoming the tedious waste of time many people consider them to be. When well designed, they add a lot to the story and the game, keeping things dynamic for the players and for the dungeon master. Because of their emergent nature, a good random encounter can keep things fresh on both sides of the DM screen, jumpstarting your creativity by getting your mind to form new connections it might not have ever done otherwise. We often don't know what the players are going to do, but how often are we surprised by what the world we've made is doing? That might sound intimidating if you've never experienced it, but it can be truly incredible, trust me. The Dungeon Master can share in that delight of discovery as much as the players sometimes, maybe even more. As an example, I would say that the table we get on page 87 of the DMG is fairly well designed. It's better than a lot of the stuff that's out there, so let's focus in on what it does well. We definitely have atmosphere and theme here. Everything fits into this idea of a sylvan forest. We've also got a pretty nice variety of things that are likely or definitely combat encounters, but some potentially beneficial encounters as well, and several neutral ones that could go either way. Reading over this table, we start to get a sense of this place and what's going on in here as these elves and gnolls are battling it out while some fey creatures go about their lives. There's stuff adventurers could do here, potential foes, yes, but also allies and rewards and even quests. Depending on how much you like to improvise at the table, this right here might be all that you need, or you can expand on these entries a bit in prep and you'd be really cooking. Once we get some random encounters down on a table, how do we know when and if the party comes across one? The DMG lays out a two-part recipe where we roll a check every so often, and if we get a particular result, then an encounter happens. The book says use a d20, and on an 18 or higher, you'd go reaching for the d12 and the d8 in this case to see what we get. For frequency, it suggests every hour, or every 4, or maybe 8 hours, or once during the day and once during the night. And we don't have to run the numbers here to see that this will give us wildly different results. So it's up to you and what the party is doing, maybe obviously. If an area is more populated or more dangerous, we might want to check more frequently. Once per hour might fit down in the mega dungeon, but once or twice per day and maybe once or twice per night might feel better in the wilderness. That feels right to me, at least. You can also always call for a check when the party is just standing around. Maybe they're debating what to do, or they're going through some particularly elaborate preparation and you want to give them a little bit of a nudge. Done poorly, random encounters can waste time, sure, but done right, they can actually stop players from wasting time. Just the threat of one. Roll some dice behind the DM screen and just watch the players get way more decisive. Well-designed random encounters can add a lot to a D&D game. Even just going by the basics, the DMG lays out over like 2.5 pages. If you want some ideas on how to make better random encounters, check this out. Up next, we're going to do a little more advanced deep dive on the dice mechanics. Then we're going to talk about what I've been doing in my open world sandbox with these tables. I hope I see you there. Until then, get out there, have fun, be kind to yourself, be kind to each other, and I will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.